Tantra is the inner weaving of our pure awareness with everything else that we are and we observe. It's basically the inner weaving between our inner Shiva and our inner Shakti. There are many paths to choose from when it comes to the tantric path, and in order to know which one you are more naturally aligned to, it's important to understand the difference between the different paths. In this episode, I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive between white tantra, red tantra, black tantra, and the middle paths of pink tantra and gray tantra. My name is Silvana. I am a Tantra teacher and the founder of the Venusian Academy, space for the exploration of the divine feminine arts and Shakta Tantra. One of the easiest ways to understand all of the multiplicities of different tantras is to understand the colors. The colors have a lot of information about what is the essence of each path. So we're going to start with white tantra. So white tantra is a spiritual soul-based tantra that focuses on purification of distortions that are within our energetic field and within our own kundalini energy, and the connection between our awareness with those very subtle energies. This type of tantra is also known as white tantric yoga. So you might have heard of that before. And what you're basically doing in this type of white tantra is a lot of meditation practices, a lot of breathing exercises, and you are working directly with your own kundalini energy. This is a tantra that is deeply connected to the meditative state, and a lot of the practices help you get into that meditative state, whether it's through the breathing exercises or through partner work. Whenever in white tantra you work with somebody else, you're not really touching them, but you are connecting with them. There's a lot of eye gazing. There might be some form of touching, but it's like touching of arms. There's nothing sexual happening. So it's a very safe and clean way of working with the kundalini energy, especially if there is a lot of unresolved trauma, a lot of unresolved things, because this has the potential of actually doing that purification process. So it's almost like another way of healing while at the same time connecting with that raw kundalini energy that is our sexual force. For white tantra, you have sounds, meditations, breathwork exercises, and very specific positions to help move the energy a certain way. So the goal of this is to achieve that inner union through the meditative practices that allow you to reach that state of bliss and union within the self. There are also a lot of discipline that's required for this path, and you will notice that in a lot of like white tantra retreats, they ask you to cover your head and put the turban because everything has symbolism. You are supposed to wear all white to symbolize the purity and the commitment to the practice. So it's more aligned with the right hand path, and it's for the people that are more inclined to a path that is already set in place. There's a lot of safety in that. There's also the guru or teacher student dynamic when it comes to these practices, and I will say this is one of the safest ways of starting tapping into the world of tantra, especially if there were those distortions of traumas from the developmental years or even beyond that. If you experience some form of trauma, this will be a very safe path to explore. Very beautiful, and it's also something that will set that foundation for what we'll later discover whenever I talk about pink and gray tantra. Second path is red tantra. So red tantra is the conscious use of your sexual energy with another partner. This is the tantra of passion, sex, and love. And the goal of this tantra is spiritual growth, purification, connection, and transformation through the use of sexual energy in a conscious, intentional way. Sex is definitely involved in the practice of red tantra. A lot of the modern sex magic practices come from red tantra, but it's important to identify the difference between red tantra and modern sex practices. Why? Because a lot of what we know as sex magic is a little bit more connected with the Lima. So that's a left-hand religious path, and the whole like neo-tantric movement that has happened over the last however many years it has happened for, it's hard to identify what is red tantra and what is telema, because telema itself gather a lot of its practices from red tantric practices. So this is a little bit of, that gray area where you don't really know where it is. But whenever it comes to red tantra, there is also a lot of very intentional practices. And I do like to always offer a sense of a warning whenever it comes to this, because over the years, as I've been studying, I've also come across certain stories of, tantric retreats, for example, wherever they are promoting red tantra. And a lot of the practices that you're doing, you have to do them with a partner. And there can be a little bit of a push of a spiritual bypassing that can happen from like, well, it's all non-duality, because it's still a non-dual path in a way, using duality to achieve that non-dual state. And there's a lot of unconscious abuse that can happen, especially if we haven't done those developmental wound healing work. And if we have sexual trauma or things like that, that's when this can get very blurry, because we don't know what feels comfortable for us. And the most important thing for any path in spirituality whatsoever is safety. In order to create safety, you have to have done that inner work to identify what actually feels safe to me, what's acceptable for me and what's not acceptable for me. So if you're interested in red tantra, I suggest that you get very clear on where you're at with yourself and understand why is it that you want to enter into red tantra. Why am I saying this? Because it's very easy to step into red tantra because of the lure of the sexual practices. There's promises of deeper orgasms, multi-orgasmic experience, more connection, right? Like all of these little dangling carrots that say like, here, this practice will lead you there. True sexuality starts with the self, because at the end, sexuality, like deep sexuality, it's a form of dissolution of the ego and the self. But if there's no identity or personality or ego to dissolve, then you're just morphing energetically with whatever is available to you. So in order to really enjoy true adult sexuality, you have to be individuated. And this is something that Jung explored a little bit whenever he was understanding, the psychology of the orgasm and the identification of true sexuality being more connected to death than with life. So this is why I always, I offer all the warning signs whenever it comes to red tantra. It's better to start off with pink tantra, just because it has that white tantra foundation that helps us first start doing the inner weaving and eventually easing into the red tantric path. Another important piece that I like to invite you to really explore is whenever you are working with, sex magic or red tantra, there's 3 different stages. The first stage is the stage where you're only engaging in sexuality through certain practices in order to conceive a child. Otherwise, everything else is done, like all the sexual stimulation is done by yourself, because you're trying to purify your own libido. So the lust and the distortions within the energetic field are not getting magnified, but they're getting purified. The second stage is whenever you engage in sexual practice with your partner, but you don't orgasm. What you're doing there is expanding your capacity to feel and expanding your ability to move your kundalini up into your crown. So this requires a lot of discipline. And if a couple is doing this practice and they're unable to do that, it's important to step back into the first stage of first purifying the libido and working more on your sexual energy on your own before you engage in practice. Now, the third stage of Tantra is whenever you become the deity itself. It's like you're channeling the energy of the divine, and then there's that merging of Shiva and Shakti represented in the physical bodies. And in order to do that, you need a very strong spiritual foundation. So you cannot just jump into the third stage, because the third stage is the fruit of the first and the second stage. It's not like, okay, now we're going to do this practice and I'm going to channel the deity. It doesn't work that way. That's the importance of setting up those blocks, grounded in spirituality, grounded in the white. Yes, there are ways of just practicing red tantra without the spiritual component. And whenever we look at the Vedic scriptures around it, a lot of the rituals that red tantrics used to do was, let's say that there was like a male initiate in red tantra, he will actually have sex with a prostitute, and his job was to perceive the deity, was to like bring forth his inner Shiva so he could see that woman and that woman's yoni as Shakti herself. So this requires a lot of discipline, a lot of inner awareness. And I don't know if we are in a space in our human consciousness evolution where we can step into that, having in mind that we have these modern lives that are disconnected from nature, disconnected from the reality of what humanity is. We live in almost like this artificial bubble, which it's understandable, right? Because whenever we understand the power of nature, we know why we did what we did as a species. But this path requires personal responsibility and also responsibility for the people that we are engaging with in these practices. That's why I really like to emphasize the importance of starting from a very grounded spiritual place and then moving into the red path over time as you're growing and evolving and you're developing a deeper, intimate spiritual connection with your partner. The third path is Black Tantra. Now, this is the most misunderstood path because of its association with black magic and also the misunderstanding of what black magic is. Because of this, there isn't a lot of information about the Black Tantra path, and also whatever information you can find, it's usually hidden. And it's something that for people that are interested in studying Tantra in general, that's like the hardest part to understand just because of the lack of information and the secretive nature of this Tantric path. So the purpose of Black Tantra is to gain powers through the use of all of these spiritual practices, through austerities. It's highly disciplined. It's actually it requires more discipline than the white Tantric path because you are working with the Kundalini sexual energy in order to gain supernatural powers. That's why it's closely associated with black magic. Why? Because what kind of powers could you gain? If you're gaining spiritual powers, we're usually talking about like controlling other people or stopping things and dealing with the energies of death. Now, let's enter into the conversation of death just for the cognitive understanding of what Black Tantra is. A lot of like the whenever you go to India, for example, or you speak with somebody that's like in the tantric path under the context of like the root of these philosophies, there is a lot of fear around the word tantric because they immediately think of the black tantric, the person that has done all these austerities and the rituals that have been prescribed from thousands of years to gain powers, to basically move supernatural energies and expand the abilities. The only studies that I've done on this have been connected to the Kaula Tantra and like the subcategory of Black Tantra. And I got to understand a lot about it by reading some of the initiations that these tantrics go through to really start working with a guru. This is one of those paths that requires that guru. You cannot just tap into it. You need a teacher just because of the intensity, and this is a life commitment. So one of the initiations that they do for the Kaula Tantrics is that they will go to a cemetery and dig up a body, and then you set up a cardboard or a piece of wood on top of the dead body. And then you begin doing all of the rituals and the practices and the mantras. And what it has been written is that the bodies will start moving. So it's almost like a form of necromancy. And they are doing this because if you can look at the scariest thing of life, which is death, the most disgusting thing in life, which is dead bodies, and you can find that Shiva within and remain in that non-dual state, you're able to manipulate the energies of Maya. So on the surface, it feels scary and dark and evil, but at the core, it's about the strength of maintaining that sense of neutrality with the most horrible aspects of life. And that is the core of non-duality, is to be able to remain seated in that Shiva consciousness, in that pure awareness, whenever we're witnessing things that our natural inclination is to have a strong reaction to them. So that's why it's misunderstood and it's really hard to talk about it because of the amount of fear that it triggers. Now, understanding, from without the rituals and without all the scary stuff, understanding that this is a path that uses the horrors of duality to find that non-dual state. It helps me, at least, it helps me find an appreciation for the people that are in that practice, especially whenever we look at the agoris. And the agoris are these tantrics that have dedicated their entire life to embodying Shiva and almost like letting go of all of the inhibitions and letting their animal nature express itself so they can observe it and bring it back into the oneness of everythingness. It's a path that I deeply respect, and I don't know much about it just because, like I said, the amount of secrecy around it. But what I've been able to learn from it, like the depth of the philosophy, it makes a lot of sense. Now, the importance of this is that whenever we look at alchemy and whenever we're looking at, the path of individuation, these three colors are all equally important: white, red, and black. White is the sense of life, purification, purity, peace, wisdom. Red is passion, love, like this interaction of like two separated and this desire to unite. And then black is the very necessary transformation that we all have to go through. All of the deaths that we must go through in our lives as we're alive, and the ultimate eventual death that we're all going to go through as well. So having a neutral understanding and equanimity whenever it comes to witnessing these three paths, it's very important for the tantric path in general. Even if you choose to simply commit to the white tantra path, it's like, how do I feel whenever I perceive or learn about this black tantra path? The summary of this path is that death is a teacher. And philosophy and deep studies of psychology, especially Jungian psychology, reveal this truth as well. So that's why I also wanted to incorporate Black Tantra into this conversation. Okay, so now that we understand the three primary paths, let's go through the middle paths. There's two middle paths. There is Pink Tantra and Gray Tantra. So Pink Tantra is a combination between White Tantra and Red Tantra, which means that it has a spiritual foundation of sounds and practices to help purify the sexual energy and the libido with a little bit of the essence of red, passion, sexuality, and magnetism by churning our own sexual energy and creating that inner union within. It is a path that can over time transition into Red Tantra, but it's something that I see it as a lifelong path. Like you can stay playing with this energy of Pink Tantra throughout your entire life, because it's about connecting to your body and to your own sexual energy and using the sacred vehicle that we were given to purify ourselves and to achieve that inner union, which eventually can turn into the external union. But it's an inner journey. All paths are inner journeys. Yes, we utilize our bodies to have these external practices, but regardless of which path you're on, even if it's Red Tantra, it is an inner experience. And that's why I love Pink Tantra, because it's like it keeps you grounded in this truth that this is an inner experience. This is my journey. And yes, I can share it with another, but it's my journey ultimately. I also love this path because of its flexibility and adaptability to the modern world and the way that we live our lives right now. I find it, whenever I started studying, I found it so unrealistic whenever I would read like the amount of things that you have to go through to the initiations. It's like, this isn't practical. And yes, practicality is something that can get in the way of true connection with our spirituality, but it's a choice. So I am choosing to live a life where I participate in the illusion of Maya in the world, and I'm trying to extract the most out of this existence that I have as Silvana in this lifetime, while at the same time understanding and deepening my understanding of my divinity, of my soul, of like, what is this, what is this whole game that we're playing at here in life? So Pink Tantra offers this balance of a little bit of white, but without the full commitment that White Tantra requires, requires a lot of discipline. And I have deep respect and admiration for the people that commit their lives to that. But I find myself to be more on the fluid side, where I want to kind of like create my own path to myself, because that's what feels safer, and that also allows me to enjoy life regardless of all the things that have happened on the state of the world. It's like the little time that we're given here, I want to extract the most out of it, because for me that is another way of honoring life. Pink Tantra is a very appropriate path for women that are naturally passionate and loving and have this natural inclination for devotional love. Why? Because we are working, the white piece of it is like we're working with the Mahavidyas, right? And the Mahavidyas are the 10 powers of Shakti. They are like the 10 tantric goddesses that are connected to Shiva. And I'll link the video here, somewhere in here, so you can explore them if you haven't. But the beautiful thing about this is that there is something to anchor down to, and working with the Mahavidyas creates that path. It creates the safety. It's not just the wilderness of sexual energy and exploration without a given path. This working with the Mahavidyas offers like a riverbank where the waters of our sexual energy can flow safely, and we understand where we're at in the big cosmic game. So Pink Tantra is very appropriate for women that want to embody more self-love, magnetism, seduction with themselves, with life, with their environment. It is a path that allows us to fall in love with ourselves. And I think that is the biggest service that we can do to the world, is for us women to reclaim this sense of self-love. The feminine path is about self-acceptance, and we see it in like the difference of myth that describes the masculine path and fairy tales that describes the feminine path. And I'll dive deeper into that in some future videos, the difference between the two. But the feminine path is all about learning to accept ourselves and accept our sexuality, while the masculine path is about gaining control over the sexual impulses. And those two forces together, that's what forms the beautiful quilt of life, because those are the two polarities: just the full surrender and acceptance of the nature that I am, and the mastery of control over the nature that I am. So this is what creates that magnetism and that polarity. So the most important work that we as women can do is to learn to unconditionally love and accept ourselves, our bodies, our essence, everything that we are. If you'd like to learn more about Pink Tantra, I have a free series here on YouTube. It's called The Tantric Taste. And this is 9 days where you can go through the exploration of Pink Tantra in a way that you can experience it yourself by doing some of the practices that help you anchor down the Mahavidya into your body and allows you to really connect with the energy of desire. Pink Tantra is a path for self-love, self-respect, and self-honoring, because we start perceiving ourselves as embodiments of Shakti herself. And whenever we love ourselves in that deep level, that love cannot help but pour onto the world and other people. And if you want to dive deeper into Pink Tantra and you want to learn, then please check out my mentorship program, Barani, because this is a 3-month mentorship where I teach you everything I know and I guide you through all of the foundational practices and the information that you need and the knowledge that you need to continue this path on your own and begin reaping the fruits of the tantric path. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and I will see you guys next time.